Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the, Tuesday, December 31st, 2019 Public Works Committee meeting. I'd like to start the meeting off with a roll call and determination of quorum, please.
Evan?
Here.
Stroman? Here.
Great, thank you. Now that a quorum has been established, I'd like to have an adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion to adopt the agenda by Mrs. Modrick and a second by Mr. Stroman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Let's move on to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting or any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by a unanimous vote of our council members present. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, so we will go ahead and close that. Moving on to our consent items, items 1 through 16. We're going to open this up to public comment. I do have a number of speaker request forms. Seems like they are all on number 16. Oh, I think we have to do it now. We have to do that now. Okay, I think we'll start with Melissa Frein. Just come up to the podium, make sure that you're speaking into the microphone.
Which one?
Right
That
there.
one. Okay. I'm Melissa, and I am a parent of two swimmers on Great Swimming, Colt and Carson. And before you guys make this decision, I just wanted to ask you if you've actually been down to the swim center and seen the swimming situation yourself. I often swim laps down there. Well, my son is practicing swimming, and it's the same 3 people every night that swim. There's not a lot of swimmers that go down there and swim. My son would move his lane to 12 people swimming in a lane. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced swimming with 12 people in a lane, but there's not a lot of exercise that can happen when you have 12 kids in your lane swimming. And it would just be devastating for him to have that many kids in his lane. And for his progress swimming-wise, he hopes to continue to swim and swim through college. And he has the potential to do that, but not if this happens. So you would be taking away a dream for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Frein. The next person that we have on is, I can't read the first name, but Kinkart.
Hello, my name is Cole Kinkart. I have had the opportunity to swim for both teams inside of Rapid City, and as of now I have plans to swim in college. I'm a junior right now. I'm already talking to colleges on swimming. With this new policy implementation, I feel like it will hinder my ability to perform on a higher level and to make that next step to compete on a higher level. And I just would like invite you guys to maybe reconsider this, and if this policy change does go through, any success I have going forward will be in spite of this and not because of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz Willis.
Good afternoon, Public Works Department people. My name is Liz Willis, and I'm the assistant coach for Great Swimming. Swimming is a very important ability to do. It's a lifelong sport. I come before you because I'm asking you to have the audacity to put this forward to a public discussion and vote. We are in a situation of safety. You have 12 or more swimmers, you have a safety issue. This is a shared issue of concern. Please reconsider this and look towards helping our youth versus taking it away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have is Nathan Kotz.
Hello, my name is Nathan Kotz. Just want you to reconsider this change in policy, mainly because if this was your guys' program, the program that you guys were running, the safety would be at utmost concern. But because we carry our own insurances and stuff like that, I'm sure it's not. So I would beg you guys to look at it like you were in our shoes, and the safety of the kids is the utmost important for this. Also, we just need to be able to work together, and there's got to be an amicable solution to this. I don't know exactly what that is, but I know cutting the lanes, I think it was in half is what I heard right now, is not safe for the kids. And it also stifles their opportunity to excel in the state against the other swimmers here. And right now, the city doesn't have a program for the kids, so this is a great opportunity for those kids to be able to swim and have a year-long sport, that they stay in shape. And we just ask that you guys reconsider this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have a Sherry Kotz.
Hello, I'm Sherry Kotz. I'm a parent of swimmers on Great Swim Team, and I spend a lot of time down at the swim center. It's a beautiful facility. I'm concerned as a taxpayer that a facility such as that is a burden to the taxpayers in this city. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that the city would be turning away income from nonprofit organizations that utilize this facility in a way that there aren't any other opportunities in this area. There's not high school swimming in the state of South Dakota, yet our swim teams put out kids that go to college on scholarships through swimming, and this is the only opportunity that they have to do that. And we pay to use the facility, yet the city's able to turn down the money that we're offering. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's a lot of facilities across the country that break even and make money and are able to opt for a lot of public programs because the facility isn't such a tax burden on the taxpayers.
Thank you. Next person we have is Stephen Kirsch.
Hi, I'm Steve Kirsch. I'm a long-time resident of Rapid City and a teacher in the district for a long time, though I'm retired now. I have a daughter that's in her 7th year. She's in high school with the Great Swim Team, and I'm on the board also. I'm just concerned with what's going on. I guess coming at it from a perspective as a teacher, I really think it's an admirable quality for a teacher or a school or a community or a society to put youth first. And that's just simply not happening here. We're going backwards. We're diminishing opportunities for youth. It's a common sense thing to me. We don't want to crowd kids in lanes to where it's ineffective and impractical and somewhat unsafe to practice. And yet that's exactly the direction we're going, according to the plans of the city. And it's a shame. I'll give you just a snapshot. I asked my daughter this morning, we had swim practice last night, how many people were in your lanes? She said, well, in the great team we had 4 lanes. We had 5 kids in 3 of the lanes and 6 in another. I said, okay, what about the other lanes? She said, well, the other team had their 2 lanes and they had 4 kids in each lane. And I'm thinking, well, okay, that's workable. It's getting a little crowded at 6 people a lane, but it's workable. And then I thought about, take this same scenario and impose the changes that are proposed, are planned by the city. This is what my daughter would have gone to last night. There would have been 4 lanes. 2 lanes would have been occupied by the Rapid City Racers team. They would have still had 4 kids in each lane. There would have been 2 lanes only for the great team. And there would have been 10 kids in one lane and 11 in the other. And again, that's not safe, it's ineffective, it's impractical. You're going to push kids out of this sport. not of something healthy, productive that they're doing. And so I really hope that, you know, we'll reconsider, really take a second look at this and see if we're really doing the right thing here. I certainly don't think we are.
Thank you. And the last speaker request form I have is for Duncan Olney.
Hi, I'm Duncan Olney, and I'm the head coach at Great. The biggest thing that I'd like to talk about is the reasoning behind this resolution. We've had 3 different meetings. We met to the Park and Rec Advisory Board, and they recommended to the city to go ahead and reevaluate the numbers, and Doug and his staff has been doing that, but we're still going down the same road of going to 50-50 when the numbers don't justify that. When you go into looking at it, you're rewarding a team that's getting smaller by keeping the amount of lanes, and you're penalizing the team that's getting bigger and so. So I'd like to have Charlie, Cole, Ainsley, stand up, Parker. These are your kids. Just multiply that by 10 in a 7-foot wide lane. That is very unsafe. We also have a policy where we take the flags down so they can't see when the wall is coming. They have done one way up high, but it's at a different stroke count, so that affects their training. So, thank you. Our biggest problem is safety, and our concern is that we're being penalized because we're growing. 2020, tomorrow, is an Olympic year, which means we're going to have 10% more, if not 20 more swimmers coming in the fall. And what's going to happen? We were told we're going to get our number of lanes, and we are the ones that have to restrict the number of people that come into our program, instead of being a supportive facility by the city and saying, hey, we want this to grow for our kids. And this keeps the kids happy, keeps them off the street. Then police don't have to deal with them, the firehead don't have to deal with them up on M Hill and doing all the things they don't need to do. A couple of these kids, they're up at 5:30 in the morning, they swim until 7, they go to school, they go home, do their homework, they're back in the pool at 6:30 until 9. Another suggestion was that we go until 9:45 for some of our kids. And those kids over there, those kids over there are a little young to be going to 9:45, some of the other swimmers that you see out there in the audience. So please reconsider this. The old policy is based on the number of swimmers versus the number of lanes you have. This policy that is going before you right now, it doesn't matter how many swimmers the other team. If they have 5 swimmers, they're still going to get 2 lanes. And I don't think that's fair. You're punishing a program that's flourishing and making a standard program stay in existence when it could go away. And Doug is trying as much as he can with the limited space. That's the other problem. We're going to outgrow. The other thing we really need to look at is the growth of this community. In a year or two, when the base starts, the training center out there, you're going to double your population, and you're still not going to be able to support 2 swim teams in the 8 lanes that we have right now. So facility is another issue that we should really be addressing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone that showed up and spoke today. We appreciate your words and your involvement. We're going to go ahead and close public comment at this time, and we're going to move along the agenda. We have our consent items 1 through 16. Asking my committee members, do we want to pull any?
I want to pull 14 and 16.
Okay, Mr. Evans wants to pull 14 and 16. Mrs. Modrick?
16, thank you.
Okay, great. Just 16, correct, Lisa? Thank you. All right, I'll take a motion. Okay, we have a motion to approve items 1 through 15, with the exception of 14 and 16.
Yes.
Is that how we say it? Yes, okay. We have a motion by Mrs. Modrick and a second by Mr. Evans. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, motion carries. Let's move to item number 14. Mr. Evans, you have the floor. We have authorized staff to seek proposals for professional services for the Solid Waste Master Plan, project number 19-2561, CIP number 51229. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. My only problem with approving this right now, without any discussion on it, is that we have a vacant position there that's highly, involved in this particular process here at the solid waste. And we have to decide whether or not we're going to hire a person that matches our philosophy, or whether we're going to have a philosophy that matches the expertise of the person we hire. So I think we're jumping the gun on this, and I think we should table it somehow. We decide what we're doing, frankly. So that's all I had to say about that.
Okay. Mrs. Modrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That definitely caught my interest on that statement. I suppose I would take this to Public Works if I could and ask Dale a question.
Please do.
Thank you. Hi, Dale. I know that we are in transition. I've been following the transition of our management division on there, and I, too, understand that master plans many times in our community are put aside until we have that leadership in there. What do you have to say about this particular plan coming forward right now without that leadership?
Well, we have hired a solid waste superintendent. His name's Jeff Barber. He's worked out there for a number of years. He has agreed, certainly on an interim basis, to be the leader out there, and he's an excellent leader. We need to make sure that he has all the tools that he needs to do his job. Not just him, but any person that is involved in the operations of our solid waste division. That's what this master plan will help. The previous planning effort, which was over 10 years old, there was no discussion in that plan about capital improvements. If you've read the description of this item, that's one thing that we have to act on immediately. That facility is aging. We need some work done out there. I don't see that tabling this item is of any benefit to our solid waste division at this time. It is time to move forward with it right now. It is going to take a few months before we even get anyone under contract to be able to start performing the plan, and it'll probably be the end of the year 2020 before there's any sort of draft plan available. So we have time. Tabling it at this point in time, I think, is premature. I think we need to move ahead.
And it's like you said, this is something that needs to be done, and this particular master plan is a 15 to 20 year projection in our planning process. The amount that is budgeted for that master plan is how much, Dale?
That is not, we just need to have authorization to start the process. When we work with the scope of work to try to hire a consultant, then we'll know what we're looking at as far as a cost. What you're approving today, there's no cost attached to it. We're just asking the council's permission to move forward with this item. Every step along the way, council will be involved, so we'll be bringing it back every time that there are interviews that are done. In fact, we would anticipate certainly council involvement in the interview process for hiring a consultant to do the plan.
So Mr. Barber will take this project on if this is approved by City Council?
Actually, Dan Kuhn, the Assistant Public Works Director, he will be the person managing this project. So it goes even above the solid waste superintendent out there. As you may or may not know, Dan has many, many years, if not decades, in the solid waste industry. So he's a perfect person to manage this project.
And that was exactly what I wanted to hear. I'm glad that Dan is the overseer on that. There's a statement in the letter, and it states the project budget is $750,000, which is funded using solid waste division funds, and that will be for conducted 2020. Is that an amount that we are looking at?
Could you repeat that, please?
I'll read it as it is in the letter. The project budget is $750,000, which will be funded using solid waste division funds. The project will be conducted in 2020.
That's correct, yes.
But we're not making any funding decisions.
No, not today. When that contract becomes before you, then that's the opportunity the city council has to either approve or not approve the contract.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying all of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Modrick. Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, I appreciate that you have indicated we're going to be including council people in the selection committee. Is it also possible to perhaps have members of the sustainability committee, since I think it sort of is helping to determine the philosophy of the city going forward in terms of that particular feature of our community and how involved we're going to be in, you know, recycling and renewal and that sort of thing?
Well,
Is that not something that's possible?
the consultant selection, we're qualification-based selection. So at the time we're selecting a consultant, there literally is no direction as to where the plan is going. All of that is figured out once your consultant is on board. That's why they are being hired and getting paid. So to have someone from the sustainability on the selection committee really doesn't make a lot of sense. Certainly, we could possibly have one member from the committee sit in on the interviews. That wouldn't be a problem. But during the interviews, you're not defining the scope of the project. I just want to be clear that you're selecting a professional firm to do the work for you.
Well, I understand that's true, but I also know that when you hire a professional firm, you hire their philosophy along with it. And all philosophies are not equivalent. And some, in fact, they're diametrically opposed. And we want to make sure that we get one that's, you know, biased toward where we want the city to go from our perspective rather than their perspective. Because when it comes back after you pay all these fees, I've noticed a resistance on the part of people to say, well, we don't really like that plan. And so I just don't want that to happen. So I think it's more important that we do include more members on there that reflect the philosophy of the way the city is moving. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Duly noted. All right, item 14, we're looking for a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Stroman, second by Mrs. Modrick. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now moving to item 16. Approve resolution number 2019-097, entitled A Resolution Altering the Rapid City Parks and Recreation Department Priority Use Policy. Any discussion on this matter? Mr. Evans, you have the floor.
Well, I'm a little bit concerned that this, I've read all of this documentation. I've read the new policy that they want to replace the old one with, and frankly, I don't find the justification for it, and I can't figure out where it came from exactly, because to me, as a former swimmer, and who used to swim those lanes, I got to tell you, loading those lanes up with a lot of kids is hazardous. And you're going to have arms flailing and fingers poking and eyes hit and everything else. I don't like the idea that we're not basing this upon the safety of the kids, and I don't find that rationale anywhere in here. So I would oppose adoption of this new philosophy. I'd like to, whether we table it or whatever, but we need to have discussion from people that can put this kind of input in, because frankly, I don't find the rationale anywhere as to why this policy is being changed. And I don't like that. Thank you.
All right, purpose of this committee meeting is to have these discussions, and we have two other people in the queue, as well as our Parks and Rec director. So I will move over to Mrs. Modrick. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask, if I could, our Parks and Rec director, Jeff,
Please do.
as well as his staff that's here that's been working on this. Now we need the other side. Mr. Bigler, if you could.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for everybody coming. It's awfully nice to see this kind of support for the swimming community. A little surprised that the other swim team didn't have anyone here, but perhaps they're saving their comments for Monday night. I'm sure that there'll be an equally lively discussion Monday night as well. A little background on this policy. The former priority use policy that's still in effect until a new one, if and until a new one is adopted, based the lane allocations on the number of individuals registered onto the USA Swimming site. Each team registered their swimmers on those sites. And we noticed throughout the past several years that the numbers on those teams did not accurately reflect the numbers of kids on either team that are actually using the facility and swimming. So we're making these recommended adjustments to be based on the actual numbers of swimmers on each team that are coming and using the facility for their swim team. We pulled a report from our registration system, and it indicated that the percentage of swim team members coming to use our facility over the month from November to December, when we pulled this information, 55% of those kids were on the Great swimming team, 45% of the kids were on the Rapid City Racers team. So we'd like to go forward with a policy that makes those lane allocations based on the numbers of kids that are actually using the facility, not the numbers of kids that are registered on a USA Swimming roster, which the two do not match. Therefore, this resolution also gives the Parks Department the ability to make alterations to that allocation of lanes on a seasonal basis, depending on the numbers of kids that each team has. So it's our hope that we'll be able to sit down with the presidents of each of these groups on a regular basis and find out if their numbers are growing or shrinking, therefore basing the allocations on that. So what this would do, based on this recommendation of 50% to each group, we're talking about that the Monday through Thursday evening section, where there are 6 lanes available for swim team use. Currently, 4 of the lanes are used by Great and 2 by the Racers. So what this would do would be to give each team 3 lanes, and then reserving the last 2 lanes of our 8-lane facility for either city programming or open swim for the public.
So if I could move forward with that. Thank you for that, Jeff. So now the question starts drilling down to the numbers. When you'd stated that Great is at 55% and Racers at 45%, that doesn't equal a 50% equality.
No, it does not. And if we were to go 55% of the available lane space, that would be 3.5 lanes. I think it's 3.5 lanes to 2.5 lanes. So there would be 1 lane that would have to be shared by each group. We don't see that as really a viable option.
But if you rolled it up to the nearest 100th, then we would be at a different number than halves. And it sounds like at one point that was, or maybe even currently, that's where it's at. And another statement that was made by one of our speakers was that that public lane might not be always used, and if we've only got 1 to 3 people using 2 lanes, they're 1,000% safe. If we've got 12 children using 1 lane, we're 1,000% unsafe. There's not a safety number there.
Well, okay.
So I'm just asking
Sure.
now, why wouldn't we, since this is a paid unit, the city doesn't have this program, it's so important to our children. Another statement was made, and it's always what I think of, and that's that we're taking children off the streets and giving them a place for their energy and their talent.
Sure.
And that should be just so supportive of everything that we do.
Absolutely. And one of the speakers made the comment that swimming is a lifelong sport, as opposed to some of the other organized sports that kids are in that perhaps they don't continue with throughout the rest of their lives. And I want to make it perfectly clear that we are not opposed to having swimming teams in the facility. We think that's a terrific use of the space. But we also need to know, and Duncan mentioned, that the size of the facility is an issue as well. So the coveted prime time space on week evenings is not always available to the general public. We have lap swimmers who are now going to the Y to swim because they know that if they were going to come to our swim center, 6 of the lanes are going to be tied up, and some people don't like that. So the comment that some of the lanes are not being used, that's correct. They're not being used to their full potential because a lot of people don't come to the facility on those evenings because of the lack of space.
So perhaps that's where we can add another lane. If we designate one public lane, because those numbers have reduced and they do have another option in the community, but are paying teams that are doing this amazing quality
Sure.
training, and even as one of our speakers had stated, can move them on into college and beyond. Maybe we need to look at it as an even bigger picture, much like we do with some of the other sports in our community, baseball and some of the other ones. We look to expand these so that these teams have a place and a facility, and they pay and they upkeep and maintain it, and then we create great quality time for our children and our families. And this is another one of those opportunities I hate to see eliminated because we do only have 8 lanes enclosed that are city lanes. I think maybe we could stretch this a little bit further and provide another lane and look at the safety side. Safety is everything to us, and I cannot even imagine that we would put 12 kids into a lane so that they can build their talent and take it beyond. And you've got commitments of 5:30 to 7 and 6:30 to 9. I mean, these kids are doing their homework and then they're going swimming, and that's where we want them. We want them in the water. That's their livelihood. That's their life. And I just compliment them all, and I hope that we can bring in more. With 2020 being the Olympics, I think that was another huge statement. That creates a whole new interest of those that don't even know it exists. So we better be ready for that and the growth. Because we don't have another covered area, we better work a little bit tighter into what we have so that we can let our teams run it in those lanes that they need to, and put one lane for public right now. If there's 3 or 4 or even 6 in the public, the one that's not being used, that's a lot safer than 12. I'm going to end right now and let others come in for the queue. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Modrick. Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I address Mr. Beegler?
Please do.
Jeff, I know you've worked diligently to try to come up with a solution here, and I don't know if there is a possibility, following up on what Ms. Modrick said about, maybe having another lane, one of the public lanes, either on a first come or have a priority, I guess, if the public is there, and if they're not there, maybe make it available to the swim team. But that's something I think that's properly placed in your arena to make that decision. You're the Park and Rec director, and this is a decision, you sometimes have to make the hard decisions, and I appreciate the work that you've done to make the decisions here and respond to the concerns. I do want to address the safety a little bit. Who determines how many swimmers are at a morning practice or at an afternoon practice or evening practice?
The teams do, the coaches, and I guess it would be just the coaches. I don't know if the presidents really have any say-so in that, but I would imagine just the coaches of the
And wouldn't it also be the coaches that determine how many swimmers are in the lanes at a time?
Yes.
That's not something that you control.
No.
So if the safety is an issue, then it would be up to you or up to the coach to make the decision of how many swimmers are in the lane.
Well, it would be a scheduling issue, and I certainly don't have any insight into the way that they schedule. I'm sure they do it for the best way they can, but yeah, certainly that is up to the individual teams and coaches as to how they schedule their lane time.
So it's not really a responsibility of the city that's making this space available to determine the usage at a particular time, is it?
No.
Yes, it is. Because we get a limited number of lanes at a limited number of times.
It's 6.
So it is a city
10 through 11,
driven
10
factor.
through 20, you come between 7 and that. It's up to them.
That's all I had to just ask Mr. Biegler about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stroman. Mr. Evans, you have the floor again.
Well, concerning that, when you force an forcing the kids into a situation where they either don't get any training or they're training under crowded positions, you know, we sort of enter into that when we're creating the situation that they have to do that. So I would like to eliminate the possibility that we force them into that situation. That's my point.
Okay. And Mrs. Modrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask the coach a question? I know he had some input. If you could come back up. Thank you. So just to clarify, I know you had something you wanted to say regarding that last statement and who has control. Can you share a little more for us?
We're allocated from 4 to 5, the 6 lanes. Then the city takes programming over from the 5 to 6:30, and we're allocated we were allocated 2 lanes, now we're being allocated 4 because of the 50-50. And then from 6:30 to 8, we're allocated again to 6. So there is a time allocation there. So we can't just say we're going to throw all 85 kids in at one time, because Xander, come here. That's one of the kids, and you don't want him swimming with Ainsley, because Ainsley stands up. She bites. So you have to look at the ability of this one at an 8-year-old. Don't want them in with the 20-something kids that are 13 and over. So that's where the issue, and they understand that as well. That's why we have a block of an hour, because these kids can't swim more than an hour, because they're done. And so then the swimming lessons come in, the water aerobics come in at that 5 to 6:30 time. We're allocated smaller space so the city can run their programs at the same time. And then after those programs come out or over, then we're allocated back those 2 extra lanes so our older kids can get in. If the school system would cooperate, we would put the older kids in early so they could get some sleep instead of going until 9 o'clock and then turning around and coming right back at 5:30 in the morning. So, but this one we can't get there much later than 4 to 5 anyway, because he's losing his teeth again.
Well, I see these beautiful fishies. One is Dora and one is Nemo, so it's kind of sweet. Can you tell me then, you preferred the priority use policy as it is today?
I have a problem with the 50-50, because no matter if we come around after this season in February, then the other team loses more people and we gain them back, we're still going to be restricted to 3 lanes according to the use policy. I know there's a provision in there that says they can be adopted, but once somebody thinks they get 50% of the lanes, no matter what happens, they get 50% of the lanes. We've been trying this for a month. I have a signed contract that we're supposed to have 4 lanes. For the last 2 months, I've been operating in 3, just as a way so they can evaluate that. It's been real tight, but it's been usable. But again, once in March and February, when we go down to 2 lanes each, it's going to be really ugly.
And Mr. Biegler, there's no other way to manage this problem?
Well, I will mention that since we've been looking at this issue, we have had full-time staff out at the swim center in that evening period and monitoring the use of the lanes, and as well as the use of the city lanes. And staff has made available, when there are limited numbers of public in those public lanes, of shifting everybody over to 1 lane and offering up that lane to one team or the other. So we have been doing that. However, it requires full-time staff to be on duty to make those calls every time.
So such as we have an occupancy, what it always posts somewhere where our occupancy is in a building. What is an occupancy in a lane, in a swimming lane? What is the set policy on that? Not just a city policy, but what is it? Thank you.
Let me bring the expert Doug
Yes.
Lowe up here.
Because I think we need to know that.
Doug is our Recreation Division Manager.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. We actually had this discussion with the swim teams in one of our 3 meetings that we met. And the preferred amount was up to like the 7 and 8, 9-year-old kids, like Duncan brought up the little guy up here. The max that they wanted was 10 at the most. And with the older kids, 6. So that would be the preferable amount that we would feel safe in them. But
So there's not a standard in swimming lanes as to how many should be in a lane?
there's really not. I know that standards, like for adults, the most that you're supposed to have is 4 that can be in a swimming directions. But other than that, we made the discussion with the swim teams because we just wanted to see what they felt was an accurate number that each team could kind of live with.
So can we open up one more public lane and let one lane be for our adult swimmers that can be 4 or more?
Yeah, we could open the whole thing to them just totally, but you got to remember, we have to have some type of lanes available for people to swim. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm gonna stand in my soapbox for the other 60-some thousand people that live in Rapid City and the 450 people that have passes at our facility. We get a lot of complaints, and we've been trying to work with everybody that, yes, a lot of them don't like coming down when there's swim teams down there. So we want to try and maintain the 2 lanes and try and push advertisement to that there's going to be lanes available, because there's a lot of preconception notion out there that they don't have lanes to swim in, or they're cramped. And yes, they're very spoiled because they don't like to swim in lanes with more than 2 people either when they come there. So it is a issue for our staff, the lifeguards. Everything is to kind of figure out the lane usage and whether or not we should give another lane over.
So Doug, when your staff has been down there and monitoring this since there's new policies and you've been looking into this, how many are using the public lane during this training session?
I would say and I've been personally down there myself probably 50% of the time, I would say we've probably given you guys or the other team probably a lane 90% of the time because there's not someone in there.
I was wondering for policy, since we're in a policy decision-making process right now, how many in the public are using those on Monday through Thursdays, are using that prime time for swimming that are not team-related?
I would say that 90% of the time we've only had to use 1 lane for the public, and we've given the other lane over to the swim teams. That's where I was going with that
Thank
comment.
you. It seems that that's the fix in our policy right now that we're reviewing, is that we have an opportunity to open up another lane. That could solve a lot of problems as these teams grow, and I think that they should grow. I think they should be able to promote more kids to come swimming, just like you'd mentioned promoting 76,000 people to come swim. I think they should also be able to promote and not feel like they're so full that they can't take on another swimmer or somebody who's potentially going to find this as their passion in childhood and then on into adulthood. And that really answered my question. I believe we have an extra lane to put in there to try to balance this policy, and I would definitely support that if Mr. Bigler could share with me how he feels about that as he is signaling me, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Yeah, if I
Thank you.
may, shifting another public lane over is going to have consequences for public use and public access of this publicly funded facility. It's going to leave only one lane available for not only open swim to the public, but for city programs, city water exercise, city swim lessons, those sorts of things, in addition to the general public coming and using the facilities. I know that the swim teams want to be able to grow and to expand their programs. We would like to also grow and expand our city offerings and our open swim times for the public. That's a facility that was built with public dollars and is funded with public dollars for the operation and maintenance. And the majority of the revenue that comes into that facility is public revenue. The swim team revenue amounts to 4% of our revenue that comes in. So we've got a lot of time that's going to be set aside, and right or wrong, this is going to be partially your decision. And certainly, again, I want to emphasize that we have nothing against the swim teams. If you think it's a great deal, but we also want to make sure that the rest of the public has a space that's available to them. We have a responsibility not only to provide space for these swim teams, but also for the general public to
Right.
use.
I'm going to wrap it up because I have taken an awful lot of time on the floor, but I did need both of you as well as our coach to speak on this. And on this charter, on this report that I have here, it looks like we've got well over 1,000 kids in the program now. So of the 400 plus passes, we do have usage, and that is what it's all about too. We want to see those kids, we just want to see those kids grow and swim and become great and do great things. So that's all I have right now, Madam Chair. Thanks for giving me the luxury of having more questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Modrick. Mr. Evans, back to you.
I do have one comment. I agree with Mr. Lowe and Biegler that taking too many lanes is a major problem. I know as a person who likes to swim, that can be an issue as well, and it is really important that we keep lanes open for people that need to use them when they have a chance to use them. And even if they're not as regular as the swim team members, I mean, they get down there when they can. But I do, again, I'm going to go back to the numbers thing. There's kind of a big discrepancy between what I'm hearing from coaches and parents and what I'm hearing from the report you guys are giving us concerning the numbers of people. And so I'm going to have a really hard time supporting this until I get the facts straight, because I don't think, I'm not going to say anybody's intentionally misleading anybody, but I do think they don't match well enough that I'm comfortable voting for it. And I think we need to do some more fact-finding before we come up with some policy that's based upon fiction. So again, I'm going to say I'm going to oppose any sort of policy change at this time.
Mr. Stroman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as adopted, as set forth by the Parks and Rec Department, knowing full well that this will probably come up again in the very near future, but that's my motion to approve at this time.
All right, looking for a second. Or a substitute motion? Anybody in the queue?
I'll go in the queue.
Hey, Mrs.
I love the
Modrick.
queue. I'd like to make a substitute motion that we send this to council without recommendation for further discussion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Modrick to move this to our council meeting on January 6th, a second by Mr. Evans. All in favor? Aye. Any against? Okay, motion carries. Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, we're at the end of our consent calendar. I'd welcome a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Mr. Stroman, second by Mr. Evans. All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you. Motion carries. Due to the holiday, our Legal and Finance Committee meeting will be following this Public Works meeting, and of course we have our next council meeting in the new year, January 6th at 6:30 p.m. in these chambers. Happy, healthy New Year to everyone. Thank you. Good discussion.